All right, guys, in this video, we're going to be talking about where you store your tension and stress in your body. I'm going to be pulling in Nicole Mosey of Core Mental Health Counseling, and what we're going to be talking about is just really simple things that you need to know and understand about why your body is sending you signals and how you can listen to it, and why that's so helpful for identifying issues before they become really big issues and problems in your life. So why don't we pull in Nicole and get to the interview? This is a topic that's actually pretty near and dear to me. And the reason for that is I'm an entrepreneur. So I have my own business, but I used to be an employee and I had a lot of tension from that. And I know I've talked to you about this before, Nicole, but what I ended up having was a situation where every morning I was waking up, I would kind of start closing my jaw. I would try to close it and I would feel this pressure, literal pressure in my jaw, and it would just pop. And then I'd be able to eat food. So the crazy thing to me, though, looking back on that, is I just accepted that. Like for months that was happening before I even called my dentist. And he's like, oh, you probably have TMJ. You should get that looked at, right? So it was an interesting experience because I wasn't expecting to get mental health advice from this TMJ doctor. But what he explained to me through the process, and this will make sense for anyone who's an entrepreneur who's maybe more high strung like I am, what he explained to me was that there's two types of tension in your jaw, and your TMJ muscles run all. I have a perfect head for this, by the way. They run through here, they run down here. And what he explained was he's like, there's two types of tension. Like people think of it like this, but he's like, there's this too, right? And he's like, you probably have some of this going on where you're carrying this tension and it's causing these issues. So there's some things you can do with like a bite guard so you don't bite down as hard at night. But he's like, you need to start paying attention to your thoughts. So he recommended meditation. He recommended to put a timer on and take a breath every 15 minutes kind of thing. And I was like, this is interesting. So the reason I share this is I think it's something that's potentially relatable to people who are either thinking about starting a business or they're entrepreneurs and you're just feeling a lot of stress or you feel a little bit off and you're not really sure what's going on, but you know there's something that's feeling off about it. So Nicole, maybe you could take a few minutes because I've actually gone through a lot of different therapies through your practice. And if you want to just take a few minutes to tell me who you are, what you've been up to in this space of mental health, and then we can get into it and start talking about different tools and techniques and tips for people that are interested in improving their mental health as it pertains to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, cool. That was a great example. I never would have thought of the TMJ doctor, linking mental health, but how cool that overlap there. I always think of people holding it in their stomach when you talk about where you hold the feelings or whatever. I know for me, I'm like, oh my God, my stomach hurts, but I never made the connection like anxiety, stomach
Mm-hmm.
pain, whatever. So thanks for sharing that example. It was really cool. And just eye-opening, just the overlap with physical health and mental health and all that stuff. So about 8 years ago, I decided I wanted to do private practice, and I think a lot of that is because work-life balance. Because in the clinics, I learned a ton, I got a ton of training, got a lot of experience, but the expectation of how many people you saw per day just didn't lead to the work-life balance that I wanted for growing a family and my own mental health and all that stuff. So about 8 years ago, I saw my first patient. It was a client I've been seeing for years and years and years, and her health insurance changed suddenly, and we were devastated because we helped her to change the health insurance so she'd get all these other benefits and whatever. And then all of a sudden they were like, "You can't see that person. You got to see that person." And we were both like, "What? What the heck?" So it kind of shifted to a private pay model because she was like, even if it's $20, can I just come and see you? And I ended up seeing her on my couch, in my apartment on the west side over there, because I'm like, I got to make this work. How can I, I know I want to do private practice. She wants to be my first patient. What's the catch here? How can we make this happen? So, started, yeah, my birthday in, I think, 2015. And ever since then, I really felt passionate about helping people, and also making sure that it's working for me too, because otherwise you just keep giving, 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 and then you're burnt out. Similar to, I think, the entrepreneur world, going, 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 working, working, working. And then we take a breath and it's like, whew, where am I? What's going on here? So I have a private practice in Buffalo, and we have 9 counselors now. And so much has changed since the pandemic and all that kind of craziness. I still feel like I have trauma response from all of the COVID things, but yeah, I know I'm happy. I'm glad that I made the switch to private practice, and I want to keep helping, clients, patients get better. And I have this real, special place in my heart for entrepreneurs. I feel like, I can relate a ton, to wanting to be successful, create a life that works for me, and also needing to make sure that I'm in check with my own mental health and, feeling okay, along the way.
That's awesome. Like I didn't know all those details too, so it's cool to get that backstory. And it's neat because you are a practitioner, but you're also a business owner who can see it from both sides of like the stresses of starting a business, the stresses of growing a business and operating it. And then of course the pandemic, I'm sure your services were in high demand after that, even more so than they were before. So it's just a lot of interesting stuff that's happened. What I
Yeah.
want to do is I want to be able to take this interview and I want to split it up into a bunch of different videos and talk about things that I have used for myself. Because this is not something like, I think this is kind of cool because I have gone through all these different therapies and different practices. Some of them were brought on by my mental health counselor, but other ones I had a business coach who kind of identified things in me as well. And he's like, hey, you may want to look into this. I think one of the earliest things that was really helpful for me was understanding where I actually store my tension in my body. So I came from a world of like, you just eat it, right? You just keep pushing, you just, grit your teeth, right? That's probably why at TMJ is just like clench down and just beat
Yeah.
this thing, And I was
Yeah.
just doing that year after year after year. And then I started to kind of see cracks in the foundation. So for me, like some of those I mentioned, the TMJ issue, I
Yeah.
had a subtle, I'll call it subtle panic attack
Hmm.
at a Lowe's. I was like picking out backsplash for a rental property. So at the time, and this is probably something entrepreneurs can relate to. I had a rental property. I had a child on the way. I had my full-time job and my side hustle. And I'm like at Lowe's just trying to pick out subway tile. And all of a sudden I just felt this like, and I was like, oh my God, like am I going to have a panic
Did you
attack in
feel
a
like you were
Lowe's?
dying? Because
A
people always
little
have like,
bit.
I'm dying.
I didn't think of it in terms of like some people like, you picture the bag and you're blowing in and out. It wasn't
Yeah.
that bad, but I was like, I knew enough that I need to walk away. And I started
Yeah.
walking and literally all I was trying to do was not make a scene in Lowe's because I was like, am I going to pass out? And it was just all this stress. But I think the thing that was really difficult for me is I didn't understand where I carried the stress in my body. I always just thought stress was something between your ears. And I didn't realize that there were these signals. And for me, you said yours is in your stomach. Mine's like right here in the center of my chest. What's your like recommendation to somebody who maybe is unfamiliar with this? Like, why do we tend not to understand this stuff that seems very simple now, but it was something that took me till 35 years old to figure out? Like, what's your experience with that?
Well, I think especially for entrepreneurs, a lot of us are like go, 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 maybe push under the rug or like focus on the goal and we forget about all the small steps along the way. So I think entrepreneurs are more like cognitive thinkers, and of course that's a huge success because if they're not cognitive thinkers, things are going to get missed or, you know, get stepped
You're
over
always
and
on.
yeah, you have to be on. You don't want to miss
Yeah.
anything, any opportunity that's going to come your way, right? So I think especially for business leaders or entrepreneurs or any highly successful, high functioning professional, they're in the kind of the one side of their brain. The opposite side of the brain is like the feelings and the, emotions and all of that stuff. And so it's bringing the two together. We call that wise mind. That's a DBT skill, but the wise mind is being able to use both of those parts of the brain simultaneously because that's where the best decisions are made. So it might be hard to convince somebody, especially someone, highly functioning, highly successful to like, hold on, slow down a little bit. But
Hmm.
actually, it makes them more successful because they're responding instead of reacting to those split second decisions that they got to make all day long as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I definitely relate to what you just said because the persistent thought that I had at the end of every single day, because thoughts were just like, I remember telling my wife that one day, I'm like, it feels like there's a beehive, and the beehive is my head, and the bees are the thoughts, and it's just going like all day, every day, sleep issues, TMJ, like all this stuff, and it just was going, going, going. And I actually did see my business start to improve from a financial sense, but one of the things that was hard for me was like once I started having kids, there was like I was just like consumed with guilt, right? Because then it became like instead of me balancing the business and my marriage and relationships, right? All of a sudden you're like a dad too. So I remember at the end of every day, the pervasive thought I had was I didn't get enough done today. It was like every single day. My wife would be like, "You work so much, you work hard, you're diligent, all this stuff." I'm like, "I didn't get enough done today," right? And I also wasn't good at identifying those feelings, right? Like I knew that there was something, like I could feel this tension, but I wasn't sure how to identify it. So Maybe for somebody who is in the same spot as me, right? Like they're thinking about starting a business, they're inside of this business and they feel off. Like, how do you help somebody through mental health and therapy start to identify where they carry their tension?
Yeah, thanks for asking that again. Sometimes I go off on tangents and get distracted, but no, that is like that's the key, right? It's like how
Well,
to
you need to use
identify.
both sides. Maybe you're just
Yeah,
using one.
that's right. I was only on my right side of my brain or whatever
Yeah.
there. No, as far as identifying emotions, I actually think it's harder than you might think because that type of person is coming in and they think they know what they want to talk about in counseling, or they think they have, a good majority of things figured out because they do. So to get them to slow down and identify feelings is complex. I don't think it's as simple as like, where do you feel that, or how do how does that make you feel? Usually that person thinks that's kind of a funny statement that a counselor says, like, how does that make you feel?
It kind of feels like
I
a
don't know.
ripoff to me.
Yeah, they get
You're just
pissed,
like,
right? They're
oh, is
like,
that
what
what
the
we came
hell?
here? Like
Yeah,
I
how
could
does
have
that make
probably
you
gotten like
feel?
a dog with a note on it that just said, how do you feel? How's it make you So feel?
Yeah.
now that we know why it's so important on where your tension is stored in your body, what I want to talk about next is EMDR therapy. It is an incredible therapy that helps you kind of rewire the pathways in your brain, let you tell a new narrative about who you are and the way that you show up in business and in life. And the video right here on the screen is going to be the next video on that. Again, Nicole Mosey is going to be joining us, breaking this down, what exactly EMDR therapy is and all the commonly asked questions and why it's so helpful and effective for entrepreneurs. I'll catch you in the next video.